Welcome back, guys. The worst has happened. Well, no, not nearly the worst, but something not great. It seems poor Snappy ran into an error and stopped his quarrying. If we look down below, we can see that we got substantially into it. Quite a bit done. If we drop down there, you'll see that the stone is at Y level 4 or 5. So there are only a couple of layers left before we hit bedrock. That said, what I'd like to do, rather than set Snappy digging again from the height he's at, where it takes a lot of fuel to get down to the bottom, I would like to set him up to mine further down. But to do that, we're going to want to clear some of the liquid out of the way. There's one item I know of that is very good at getting rid of lots of water you don't want. That item is called the sponge from open blocks. It's crafted by a wool and a slime ball, which I happen to have already in my inventory. Now, if we come over here, well, first things first, let's light this up. There, now we can see a little bit. If we place the sponge here, near the water, it will suck up a bunch of it. Then we can pick it up. Oh, okay. Here's where this water's coming from. We can pick this sponge up and place it back down to sap up more of the water. If we do this repeatedly, we will basically pick all the water up. It looks like it was actually a rather large underground lake here. Interesting to see, but ultimately somewhat problematic for us. Although what can be happening sometimes is that the water flowing down sticks around longer than it should. Oh, good. Let's make sure we get this. I actually had a tough time finding some slime, but I got it, so let's try to make sure not to lose it. There we go. Wow, okay. I am going to work on this a little bit off camera, see if I can't pick up at least most of the water here. In the meantime, we will have to think of another solution for getting all this essence, because I don't necessarily want to destroy it all. I think it would be nice to be able to store it. We'll see. I'm not certain that it's worth the effort, but it might be. Well, guys, I figured out what happened. I believe when the water from here was breached, it extended just far enough into our area that as the entirety of this hole was slowly dug down, one block at a time, the water was able to make source blocks. At least as far as I can tell. Let's see. One thing we can do to really tell, update a block next to the thing. And yeah, when it updates, yep, the block still stays. Meaning that these, I think, are all source blocks of water. The thing to do to get rid of them all is to pump them. The sponge is great if you've got just a little water like we had up here. And if I'd been on top of things and had gotten it before it had a chance to spread, the sponge would have done the whole task easily for us. But instead, what we are going to need to do is to build some sort of pump. Several mods add pumps. The one I am most familiar with is the Buildcraft pump. We'll need some iron, which we are not lacking, and some redstone. Let's see, iron, redstone. I think we will also need some sticks and some cobble. So let's start by making this gear. Yeah, as I suspected. Wooden gear, stone gear, iron gear. We'll make the iron pick we need. And, gear, redstone, ingots. Okay, mining well. Now, from the mining well to make the pump, we will need a tank, which is just glass around the outside. Awesome. Now we have our first pump. We will also need some way to power this. And I've been thinking about our power troubles and what we should do to rectify them. And I've decided that at least until we get some more resources and some more infrastructure going, solar is the way to go. I'm thinking I'm going to go with the extra utilities solar generator. Just because I don't have much of this enriched alloy. Well, I could make some of it. Let's see, is that most of what I would need? Yeah, okay, I'm gonna do that. So, the solar generator comes from extra utilities, this one does at least, and it can supply quite a bit of power. But when it does so, it can't output the power. So what we would need is something like a timer, which is just kind of a hassle to build. And I don't think that we currently have the capability to easily detect if the generator is full. Because that is optimally what you'd do. You would detect if the generator is full, and if it is, you would pull out from it for a while. But I think that requires some advanced buildcraft, which we are not ready for yet. So I'm going to go make some enriched alloy. I'll be right back. Okay guys, I have set up 2 of these advanced solar generators from Mechanism. And it's raining. Awesome. That means they won't be generating power at the moment. That's too bad. But I just made myself some of our first energy conduit from Ender.io, because if you'll recall, that is what we are going to use for conduit most of the time. I also made myself an energy cell so that we can start collecting all of this power. The buffers on the generators themselves are actually very small, only 80,000 RF. But now we can store, what, 2 million? Works for me. Let's go sleep. And then hopefully we'll start generating more power again. I made one more item while I was on my crafting binge, and that is a fluid void. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to interact with the pump we're going to use, so let's take a look. If I place the pump here, okay, it has MJ. Let me see, if I... Okay, it looks like the Ender.io conduit is actually converting the RF to MJ. So those are 2 different power types. RF power is based on thermal expansion and is the power, I guess, most commonly used in the mod pack. Whereas MJ is from Buildcraft, and it's kind of its predecessor. Oh, and here you can see the little enchanting setup I made, which I should light up now that I have cheap as free lighting. So, all this means is we are getting conversion. A lot of different conduits will auto-convert to MJ. So, what I'm hoping is if I put the fluid void on top of the pump, the fluid void should be able to take any fluid that the pump is pumping and convert it into nothing. And I believe the way this pump works is it should follow all the water in this area and suck all of it up and throw it into the fluid void. I am going to give this a couple minutes, see if that's what happens. And if it is, then hooray. If it isn't, we will have to work on an alternate method. So I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay guys, it's been a while. Actually, night and day have gone by since I last recorded that last segment. and it does not appear any of this water is going anywhere. I tried to move the pump around. I attempted to change where I put the fluid void in relation to it. And I also tried the mechanism pump, but none of that seems to have worked. I have one more thing to try, though, before I suck it up and actually manually go through and find a way to get the sponge to all the places to clear all that water, which, believe me, I want to avoid if at all possible. This one more mod is Engineer's Toolbox. Engineer's Toolbox has a basically add-on for their modular socket blocks that should pump all the blocks in a radius below it. I played around briefly with the idea of Engineer's Toolbox earlier in the season as a possibility for our ore processing, but I decided against it because the power gen in the mod just wasn't quite as good as I wanted it to be. But we can try it for this purpose and see what happens. To set this up, I think I'm actually going to set it up down here. So there's the hole. Let's place it right there. I want it further down. Okay. The way this mod works is the only block it adds is this modular socket. And the modular socket, as the name implies, is modular. That is, we can alter it by placing these, what are they called, modules on it. Each module takes up one side of the block, and they can do any number of things. The one we are interested in, as I showed you, was the endothermic pump, which should theoretically act to pump out fluids. Now I'm going to try and put that onto the bottom face. Awesome. Okay, now let's land for a second. Okay. The other modules I have are an energy input. This is going to allow us to actually put power into the block. We'll put that here on the side if we can. Awesome. I also have a pressurizer module. The pressurizer module allows us to basically store more liquid in the modular socket. The modular socket has an internal tank for liquid, which normally holds a small amount. I'm not exactly sure how much, but a couple buckets. This will allow it to hold 32 buckets in each of its 3 internal tanks. I think that's pretty good, so we will put on the pressurizer. This way, once we eventually get down to a level where it's sucking up essence, we can have it store that essence rather than pumping it all out. But we will need to pump some of it out. So a fluid output socket will be necessary. We'll use that to pump out the fluid into our fluid void when we want to do that. We will also want a tank interface. This will show us how much fluid is actually in each tank. And the last one we will need, you might notice this means we're going to be using all 6 sides of this block, which is pretty cool. This one is the range interface. This will allow us to specify how far of a distance the pump will begin sucking fluid into. Now, first we will need these energy conduits, because I just realized we're going to have to send this energy down to the side of the block. There we go. Now the block has energy. And we will also need to begin configuring all the other sides of the block. As I said, it has 3 tanks, and we have to specify which tank the liquid is going into and coming out from, and we have to select what is going to happen with the range. To do that, we actually need a tool that I have not made yet, specific to Engineer's Toolbox. Let's see, which tool is that? That is the Socket Remote. Okay, we've got a blank module. We'll need a control circuit. That's easy enough to make. And in fact, I'm not certain. Yeah, okay, I already have one even. And we've got a blank module, and we needed an ender pearl as well. There we have it, the socket remote. Let's turn our game sound down. Man, that rain is annoying. Okay, so socket remote allows us to change the different functions of each side. So currently the button on the socket remote is blue. That means it's interacting with tanks. If we right-click on this socket, it means that we're going to switch which tank it's interfacing with. Tank 0, 1, 2, or no tank. So we're going to tell this to show us what's in tank 1. Currently, there's nothing in tank 1. That's because none of the other sides are working yet. So this is our fluid output. We're going to tell that to output from tank 1. Actually, for the time being, we're going to tell it not to output at all. Let's see, there are no other options on these. The only other thing we will need to play around with is the enderic fluid pump. Okay. So in order to figure this out, we will need to tell it. Okay, I need to change to hover mode. Okay. Tell it that it is going to go into tank 1. Okay, so now when this is active, it will put all of the fluids it collects into tank 1, which we will be able to see here on top of the block to see when it fills up. When we eventually get to the point where we want to, okay, we can change that side to tank 1 and it will start pumping out the stuff in tank 1 into the fluid void. The only thing we want to change now, and I think if we shift right click, it'll change the mode on the socket remote. So green is inventories, red is what we're looking for. I don't remember. Redstone circuit. I think. Oh, nope. Let's try purple. Nope. Okay, white is generally the multi-purpose mode. Cool. So if we up the range on the selector so that it's got a very large range, I don't know what that green is there. Let's switch to green mode. Okay. I'm not sure why we did that. Doesn't seem to be doing anything, actually. We still have 5,000 RF. We still have a whole ton of water all around. The range selector looks like it is at its maximum, but if we look at our tank, we are not actually filling it up at all. Give me a moment. I'm going to see if I can't look up what we're doing wrong. I'll be back in a second. Well, guys, upon doing a little research, I have no idea why this isn't working. I know that the engineer's toolbox tooltip for the pump specifically says it's experimental and that it might not work. So I'm betting that's why this pump isn't working. I have an idea why none of the others were too, though. Watch, I've got a bucket in my hand, an empty bucket, right? Well, if I come down here and try filling it on any of this water, yeah, it doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is because none of these are water source blocks. I think they're all just flowing water that stayed here because we used the sponges on their sources. So I think this is just a bug because the sponges don't cause block updates when they take away the water. I'm not entirely sure what to do about it, although I want to perform an experiment. So I put this water source block here to try to let the... Oh, okay. That experiment is working. I put a water source block under the pump to try and get it to start working. Then when I removed it, all that water had been updated or was connected, so the whole thing collapsed. So, theoretically, if I do that enough, we may be able to reduce the water levels, if not entirely eliminate them, at least until we get down to the level of that liquid Ethereum. The Ethereum, though, might be a good candidate for pumping, especially since we do want to keep it. So give me a second. I'll try to move a... Oh, that's awesome. It is working, at least in part. Give me a second. We'll see how far this falls, and I'm going to move the pump over there, probably with my energy cell, to see if we can't pump up all of that liquid Ethereum. Be right back. Oh wow, guys. I just put this down I haven't hooked anything else up to it, and you can see that it is already filling up its tank with the liquid Ethereum. So if I put, on this side, a battery, now it'll stay charged as it's doing it, and you can see it's filling up its tank, but it has 3 of these tanks. The fact that it kept its power seems to indicate to me that it might also be able to keep its fluid when I eventually move it. Unfortunately, it also seems that it has stopped now. Even though the tank isn't full. Well, I may end up using the Buildcraft tank. Pump, that is, or the mechanism pump, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll try all 3 of them put next to each other. Either way, this is really promising. I think we'll get this basement cleared out. So I think, though, that may be the end of today's episode. We explored kind of quite a few different methods for moving fluids around, and we maybe even partially got one to work. Oh well. Next time, hopefully, we will be able to build into this basement and actually complete some of the goals we've set for ourselves. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.